builder. I'm Gifty Andoh Appiah. Government is tonight rejecting claims by the opposition NDC that it has, over the past 3 years, mismanaged oil revenues. Deputy Energy Minister Dr. Amin Andam argues that all agencies under the ministry have rather been improved. He talks about the improvement in the financial position of distressed entities and the introduction of a transparent approach to contract negotiations. The opposition NDC, in a policy discussion dubbed State of Ghana's Energy Sector, accused the government of wasting resources, insisting it has a far superior record in managing the sector. Government has today been responding. First, on the renegotiated ACA/AGM agreement, which the NDC suggested was fraught with impropriety. Government says it put the interests of the state first in the negotiation of that deal.
They accused the government of renegotiating the AGM agreement under bizarre and opaque circumstances. They stated, and I quote, "In the renegotiated agreement, GMPC's additional participating interest was reduced from 15% to 3%. As if that was not enough, Exfloco's commercial interest of 24% was dropped to zero," unquote. As you may know, the AGM petroleum agreement was signed under the NDC government. However, the company could not meet its minimum obligations. Following the acquisition of the company, the new owner presented a request to government for renegotiation to provide some incentives to support the prospects presented by the block that is described in Ghana as the deepest oil block. This is not the first time a government will provide incentives for prospects in deeper blocks to be exploited. Even the UK government has given tax incentives to attract companies to the deeper offshore North Sea area. And so why should it be a crime? This renegotiation is allowed under the law and also under the petroleum agreement itself. Therefore, government granted some incentives which resulted in the company drilling 2 mandatory wells and an additional well, the third well, which was not in the original agreement.
So that is Dr. Amin Andam speaking there. The NDC earlier had accused government of breaching the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. Dr. Amin Andam says the opposition party has a poor understanding of the law.
Section 21(4) of the law provides only for a minimum of 70% of the annual budget funding amount to be used for public investment expenditures. They said public investment expenditure. But public investment do not necessarily mean capital expenditure. That is where they have misunderstanding of the very law they passed. For example, in the year of reference, in their statement, and subsequently, the NPP government allocated more of the annual budget funding amount, the oil money, towards the free senior high school program. And I want to ask, is that not public investment? Free senior high school is not public investment. Due to the fact that part of the expenditure from the allocation to the free senior high school program went to non-capital spending, the NDC misunderstood this to mean a violation of the law. This is wrong. I can read what the section says. That for any financial year, a minimum of 70% of the annual budget funding amount shall be used for public investment expenditure, consistent with the long-term national development plan or with subsection 3. Now, if you go to subsection 3, there is mention of service delivery in education, science, and technology.
Dr. Amin Andam there. Well, let's get on the lines and speak to Head of Communications and Public Affairs for the Energy Ministry, Nana Damwa, who joins us right now. Nana, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Good evening to you, and thank you also very much for giving us this platform.
You're welcome. Let me also announce the presence of John Jinapor, who is former Deputy Energy Minister. Gentlemen, both of you are welcome, and thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to start with you, Nana Damwa. You talk about, we've heard Mr. Andam talk about list the things that are not wrong that government has done, 70% being used to fund public investment expenditure, among others. But the NDC earlier had indicated that you had reduced the participation, for example, the percentage of a GNPC to 15%. You've also reduced some 24% to zero.
That, as we have already stated, is a very misleading and economical fact that the NDC sought to present in their policy dialogue that they organized. The reality is that in as much as they may say that we have reduced government stake from 41% to 18%, they have refused to acknowledge that we also increased the free carried interest from 10% to 15% and also reduce all the others to about 3% paid interest. Now, first of all, the crux of the argument, the gravamen of it, is that we have refused to, take paid interest in an oil stake. It is mindful to note that this is not the first time that the government of Ghana has refused to take paid interest in any stake in any oil and gas industry. Today, they've been reminded that when it came to the Sabre oil sale, it was done to Petro SA because the government of Ghana refused to take up an extra stake because GNPC at the time said they could not take up any extra stake. Also, when it was the time for the EO group to offload the shares, they told the government of Ghana, which had the first right of refusal. And the government of Ghana, through GNPC at the time, refused to take it up because they said we could not afford it. So today, what is so criminal about the fact that the government of Ghana has decided that based on its commitment and levels of exposure for GNPC, we cannot take up all the extra stake that is given to us in a petroleum agreement, but rather we would decide to increase the free carried interest from 10% to 15% and take up an extra 3% as carried interest. What is the challenge there?
All right. Let me throw that to former Deputy Energy Minister John Jinapo, who is also on the line. Mr. Jinapo, if you heard Mr. Dr. Andam, he indicated that tax incentives really are normal, and as Nana Damwa is saying, the GNPC had indicated that they could not take on extra stakes, and there's nothing wrong with that.
They could not take on what?
He says the GNPC had indicated they could not take on extra stakes.
How? This was negotiated with GNPC. It was approved by Parliament. In 2014, what happened? That GNPC could undertake all this with NDC. But with the coming into office of the NPP, they cannot undertake that. Let me clearly explain this for you. They are trying to obfuscate the issues. We are talking of additional interest. There are three types of interest. There's the free carriage, there's the additional, and there's the commercial interest. With the commercial interest, you pay. And that is what Exploco was holding. But with additional interest, where our bone of contention is, you do not pay a penny until oil is discovered. And if they challenge me, I will read the relevant portion in the agreement, Article 2, Section 2.4, which says that GNPC, Section 2.5, in addition to the initial interest provided for in Article 2.4, GNPC shall have the option in respect of each development and production area to acquire an additional interest of up to 15% in the petroleum operation in such development and production area. So it's only when we get to the development and production, and you only get to development after you have struck commercial quantities in oil. When you struck commercial quantities of oil, then the state will say that, look, we want to exercise our right. We want to take 15% more. That has been reduced to 3% under President Akufo-Addo. Please, you do a lot of fact-checking. Check from the Parliamentary Hansard. When we were approving this deal, because in accordance with the Petroleum Exploration Act, in accordance with the Constitution, it's only Parliament that can grant approval and bring effectiveness to this agreement. Parliament stated and directed the minister to increase our stake from 3%, the additional interest, to 10%, and report back to Parliament in 6 months. This is well captured in the Hansard. As I speak to you, we are getting into the 9th month. That has not been done. The minister has not even thought of it courteous and prudent to come back to Parliament and report to Parliament that following your directive to me, this is the state of affairs. Rather, the minister came back in December and came up with further amendments stating, and let me quote this clearly, that he as minister is obliged to provide Aker Energy with assistance to acquire licenses and permits. Let me tell me which of the agreements have this kind of provision that if Aker fails or is unable to obtain licenses like environmental permit license, our minister, a whole minister of energy, has to step in and help them acquire those licenses. And you put that in an agreement and bring it to Parliament. What kind of issue is this?
So, Mr. Jonapon, you're indicating that your bone of contention is with the additional interest. And he said that Parliament had actually directed for some steps to be taken. Those have not been taken. And you also say that the minister actually led this group to enter the negotiation, if I get you right?
Yes, under the petroleum laws, it's the minister that leads the state to negotiate.
So, Nana Mo, I'm coming to you with this. You've heard what he said.
The second one, oh? The Petroleum Revenue Management Act. You asked him that question.
I would like for him to respond to what you've just said, and then we can move it on from there. Nana Mo.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting that Mr. Jonapon now offers this explanation that is offering, because I have before me his statement. And in the statement, they did not concede in any part of the statement that indeed government had increased GNPC's free interest from 10% to 15%. Today, now that we've brought these additional facts, he's now going into extra explanations, and we thank God that at least he's beginning to admit that we're economical with the truth. The facts are the facts, and these are...
What's the admission? What's he saying? I didn't hear him well.
If I may please finish. Hello?
Yes,
I didn't hear him well. Can you tell me what he said?
Nana Mo, he says he didn't hear you. If you could just
okay,
go over what you said.
At least there's an admission that he was economical with the truth when he sought to say, and if you just permit me a bit, this is what they sought to say. In the renegotiated agreement, TNPC's additional participating interest was reduced from 15% to 3%. As if that was not enough, Exproco's commercial interest of 20% was dropped to nothing, zero.
Have I changed that yet? What is contradictory about that yet?
What they did not mention in all of this is that GNPC's stake, which was 10% carried interest, was increased to 15%. That they did not mention at all. They did not mention that at all. Now, what we have done is a bit of financial modeling. And in the financial modeling, what we have realized is that under the original model which they have laid, in which they had the 24% commercial interest and then the additional 15%, the net gain was going to be 9%. Under this new model, where we have increased the free carried interest from 10% to 15% and added an additional interest of 3%, that gives us a benefit of 13%. So clearly, the net gain is much more than that. Mr. Jonapon is welcome to argue with us and look at the figures and the financial modeling that has been done. But what we can see based on the financial modeling that we have done is that this agreement represents a net gain for the government of Ghana, looking at the financial activities that would have been committed to the original agreement. To move further, all of these arguments in the back and forth is basically an issue of incentives. Now, it seems as though the NDC wants to argue that the incentives that the government has given ACA and AGM in the particular renegotiated agreement is what they have a problem with. I find that very troublesome. I find that very mischievous. Because...
Another one. Let's bring Mr. Jonapon in to
can I deal with that?
What
the modeling, and their modeling is the worst model I've ever seen.
Why do you say so?
Because that model is in the interest of Aker and to the disadvantage of Ghana. And he keeps saying incentives. Incentives for who?
Mr. Jonapon, when you make such a statement, I'd like for you to break it down so that everybody else can understand. How is it advantageous to Aker more than it is to Ghana?
You have an interest of 25 total. And you don't pay anything until oil is discovered. You've reduced it to 18. And you turn around and confidently look in the eyes of Ghanaians and tell them that based on your so-called modeling, that 18 is better than 25. My sister, if the state has 25% interest, you pay nothing until oil is discovered. You rather prefer to have 18. In any case, that 18, once production starts, we would pay for that. Nothing is free until oil is discovered. And I think viewers understand these issues. Where is the shifting in position? And you say that we're economical with the truth.
All right.
We have been consistent.
Another one. Mr. Janapo also mentioned that the minister was supposed to get back to Parliament with some reviews that were supposed to be effective. Has that been done? Has that been done?
I am not aware that has
been done. Not aware. Are you arguing with me?
And the question I would want to ask is that it describes the model as a model that is in favor of ACA. May I respectfully ask if he has indeed seen the model at all?
Mr. Janapo, are you willing to answer that?
What did he say?
The model that we are saying we have you seen it at all?
I didn't hear him. Please, can you repeat that for me?
The model you disagree with. He's asking if you have seen it.
Yes, I have seen it. We asked for the modeling on the floor. Nana should rather go and read the parliamentary report. He's not even aware.
Very well. All right,
you're not even aware that Parliament directed your minister to go and increase the seat. And yet, you are here arguing with me. When Parliament approves, your duty is to read what Parliament says you should do. Because Parliament that grants you the approval, and you are not aware as a spokesperson, and you say that I am economical with the truth. When you as a spokesperson for the ministry,
that you have been
economical with the parliamentary approval.
Mr. Janapo, you were economical in the truth when you.
So, gentlemen, I'd like for us to move this conversation forward by bringing in my second question.
With the Petroleum Revenue Management Act issue. It's very important for me.
Briefly for me, because I want you to also give us evidence.
Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC report of 2017. PIAC was established by Act 815 of 2011. It's a creature of law. And I refer to paragraph 23. In the 2017 financial year, only 37% of the utilized ABFA amount was used for capital expenditure. Less than 70% stipulated in the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. It is PIAC that is stating this. It is PIAC that presented it to Parliament. Parliament is led by the MPP. They have the majority. We debated it and adopted this report. And so let no one attempt to deceive Ghanaians. This is a house of record, Parliament.
So essentially what you're saying is that the 70% of public, that is used for public investment expenditure as said by Dr. Andam is not true.
How can that be true when the PIAC report says that what you utilize is less than the 70% stipulated in the PRMA? The PRMA is the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. PIAC is saying that you didn't meet that condition.
In effect, that would be 60. We're looking at, say, 63% here, based on the 37% you've indicated.
Which means that instead of spending 70, they spend 37. So you're supposed to spend 70 in an exam. You only did 37.
Mr. Janapo,
Parliament has adopted this, and you are here telling us that we are myopic.
Right. Hang on for me, Mr. Janapo, and Nana, I'll bring you in. But I want, Mr. Janapo, I want you to also give us evidence when you indicate that the renegotiated ACA AGM deal is fraught with corruption. What exactly are your evidence?
While they were reducing our stake, they were clandestinely forming the company known as Quad Energy 1 month into bringing that agreement to Parliament. And you know what they did? This Quad Energy was carried free of charge. The whole of Ghana, we got 15, a private entity, which was formed 1 month into bringing this agreement to Parliament. They gave them an interest of 5%, not commercial, not additional, free. They are carried free of charge. Why is it that Mr. Boachajaku refused to agree to these terms? Look, my sister, these are serious matters. And this kind of issues they are trying to do to obfuscate them will not work.
Let me bring Nana Damoy to answer to that. Nana.
Thank you very much. On the issue of Quad Energy, it will interest you to know that the arguments he's raising are defeated by 3 major points. Number one is that commercial partnerships between partners has nothing to do with government. Government cannot dictate who a private international company decides to choose as a partner. Secondly, the formation of Quad Energy is an issue that beats my mind that they are trying to use as evidence of corruption, because essentially what has happened is that a special purpose vehicle has been created. Quad Energy is a consortium of older companies, some of them 9 years old, some of them 5 years old, that have been in existence. And to enable them get into that agreement, as per the commercial agreement they reached with their partner, they formed Quad Energy, which is a consortium that represents the interests of the formative company. So what is the problem with that? If we
Can I answer that?
If we had decided.
Oh, no, you finish. No, not finish. I'll wait for you. If they give you another time, I will.
Yes, Mr. Jinapo, hang on. Let him make his point.
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Interference in the affairs of a totally private entity. Again, what does the law state when it comes to an indigenous Ghanaian company that wants to participate in an oil block? Two major things.
An indigenous Ghanaian company that was formed a month prior to presentation of the deal to Parliament?
Some of the agreements that the NDC signed had companies that were formed a week.
Mr. Damwa, just to be clear, when I ask this question, and I believe when Ghanaians ask this question, what they want to know is not who did it worse, but was this right according to the laws of the country?
And I'm saying, first of all, that Quad Energy is a consortium of companies that formed a special purpose vehicle. So unless we are saying that Ghanaians are precluded from forming special purpose vehicles for the purposes of participating in our oil and gas industry, this argument does not arise. Secondly, it does not fall foul of the law, because the law says that to be an indigenous Ghanaian company in our oil and gas industry, what is needed is that you are incorporated in Ghana. 80% of the management must be Ghanaians, and 100% of all other staff must be Ghanaians. It says nothing about tenure. Indeed, it is for that reason that the NDC was able to ensure that companies that were formed a week to the presentations of agreement before Parliament were part of oil blocks that they are assigned to. And let us stop trying to create the false impression that Quad Energy just came into existence a week or a month before the presentation of the agreement. Because if you look at it really, what you realize is that it's a consortium of old companies that came together to form the special purpose vehicle. If they have any problem at all, what they are seeking to say is that the formation of a special purpose vehicle is wrong. And I'm not aware of any law or anything anywhere that suggests in the slightest of instances that this is wrong. It is a globally accepted business practice.
Okay.
Now, let us deal with this issue of the ABFA.
Right. I was going to go to that. 70% your minister said had been used for public investment expenditure.
If you will allow me, may I please read to you Section 21(4) of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act 2011, Act 819, and it provides as follows. For any financial year, a minimum of 70% of the annual budget funding amount shall be used for public investment expenditure. Please emphasize public investment expenditure consistent with the long-term national development plan or with subsection 3.
I'm stepping in because I'm constrained with time a little. And what Mr. Jinapo says,
I've been holding on for a very long time.
Mr. Jinapo says is that 37% of that amount was invested in public expenditure.
No, it's it's not me. It's PIAC.
It betrays their lack of understanding of the very law that they passed.
Okay.
Because Section 3
Can I deal with
of the
that,
law,
please?
which lists the items to be invested in, includes
What's the time?
service delivery in education, science, and technology. Now, the reason they are trying to make this argument is that, according to them, some of the investment or some of the expenditure on education were for non-capital reasons. However,
wrap up for me on that.
As clearly stated, says that it is allowed for investment in service delivery in education, science, and technology.
Okay.
We are all being invited to go down.
Can I deal with that?
Because the NPC is trying to explain public investment expenditure to mean capital expenditure.
Okay. Nanadamo, let me bring in Mr. Jinapo to respond to. Let me bring in hang on. Let me bring in Mr. Jinapo to respond to what you've said. You've spoken at length.
Look, he says that we don't understand. Is he saying that the whole majority in Parliament, they do not understand?
What he's saying, Mr. Jinapo, if I understand him, is that the sort of calculation you do falls short of the standard of the calculation that ought to be done as far as public investment expenditure is concerned.
I'm saying that the PIAC has generated a report and stated that you spent only 37%, which falls short of the 70% in the public, the PRMA. It's PIAC that did that investigation. It's a statutory body. I only referred to it. And I said that this document was laid before Parliament. Parliament debated it, and both sides adopted the report. So I haven't done anything. All I'm doing is that I did research, and I'm depending on the report that is before the House, that has been approved by the House.
Do you want to
even direct it at me?
Do you want to address the Quad Energy issue briefly so we can wrap up?
When the MPP come telling you that they are forming a special purpose vehicle, please be very careful with them. Anytime they come telling you that they are forming a special purpose vehicle, the minister has the final say to approve it. He says that the minister has nothing to do with private sector companies. That is not true. When you are bringing the petroleum agreement, all the companies, the minister must ensure that they have the experience, they have the requisite knowledge before you allow them. And we are talking of a situation where you are watering down our shares, and we are seeing 5% of the free shares going to another company. We ought to be worried.
What then is your plan going forward?
Pardon?
What then is your plan going forward, Mr. Jinapo? The minority, your party, etc.
What is the way going forward?
Right, as far as these allegations that you've raised, because of course government is shooting down these allegations. I'd like to understand what your plans going forward as far as this matter is concerned.
Is to use parliamentary processes, one, to drag the minister before parliament, because what he is doing is a complete affront to the authority of parliament. Two, to use whatever legitimate means under the constitution, including you, the media, with advocacy. And I'm happy that you are bringing this issue up. Oil is a finite resource. One day this oil would finish. And so when we are working with oil, the state must derive maximum benefit from the oil. You cannot say that because of so-called incentives, you are going to lower the bar, you are going to water down our shares and give it to other companies and just say that it's based on incentives. The last one the minister said, which is dear to me.
Finally for me.
He says that he can switch Mohammed's plans off and won't have done so. Please check my joy online. You reported him on the 26th of November 2018 when we had done so under them. Do you know what the minister said? He said the minister attributed the recent outage to a coincidence of events, including gas supply challenges to car power. Only car power's challenge is taking you through Dumso, and yet you have the audacity and the temerity to tell Ghanaians that you can switch Mohammed's plans off and still not have done so.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. This is all time will allow us on Top Story today, but I've been talking to John Jinapo, former Deputy Energy Minister. They also on the line was Nana Damwa, Head of Communications and Public Affairs, Energy Ministry. Bond savings and loans, your success, our passion. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready. Gasam, the nation builder, brought you Top Story with me, Gifty Andoh Appiah, and Kojo Menu is here in the studio. Still on Top Story, some news just coming in.
Well, Gifty, there's actually some source information, on the whole Accra Energy and the issue that is at stake now. So this is just some piece of information that we need to give our listeners. It says that Accra Energy PA amendment is a clarification and confirmation of existing rules and regulation in the existing PA from 2006. Amendments are in line with international best practices. Now, it says it will enable increased exploration activity and development offshore. This will make significant contribution towards achieving Ghana's ambitious oil production target. Again, it says this will secure the clarity and predictability necessary for executing the Pecan project at ultra deep waters with expected investment of $4.4 billion. And it says that Accra Energy will be a major contributor to Ghana's oil production and development of the local industry.
So that's just some information there for your information. Top Story, like I said, is brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready? Gassim, the nation builder. I'm Gifty Andoh Appiah, and Evans Mensah is standing by with Ghana Connect.